The gunshot echoed through the saloon just as Olivia Andrews realized her brother had gambled away her dead mother's wedding ring, and when she lunged across the poker table to retrieve it, 4 rough hands grabbed her arms while Samuel laughed and pocketed the gold band like it meant nothing at all. Nevada, Missouri had never been kind to women without protection, and Olivia had learned that lesson harder than most in the spring of 1876. Her father had died 2 winters back, leaving her and Samuel to run the general store their family had operated for 15 years. But Samuel had discovered whiskey and cards, and within 18 months he had drunk away most of their inventory and gambled the rest. The store stood empty now except for bare shelves and broken promises, and Olivia worked dawn to dusk at the boarding house just to keep a roof over their heads. She struggled against the men holding her, her dark hair falling loose from its pins. "That ring belonged to our mother. You have no right." Samuel's face was flushed with alcohol, his eyes glassy. "I had every right. You are my sister living under my care. Everything you own is mine to do with as I please." The words stung worse than a slap because Missouri law gave him that power. At 22, Olivia was old enough to know better than to trust anyone, but she had made the mistake of loving her brother despite his failings. She had covered his debts, made excuses to shopkeepers, and believed him every time he promised to change, and he had used that love like a weapon, taking and taking until there was nothing left to give. "Let her go." The voice came from the doorway, quiet but carrying enough authority that the men's hands loosened on her arms. Olivia turned to see a tall cowboy in the entrance, his hat shadowing his face. He stepped into the lamplight and she caught her breath despite herself. He was young, maybe 25, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of creek water in summer. Dust covered his boots and the hem of his long coat, suggesting he had ridden far. "This is family business," Samuel said, but his voice wavered. "Looks to me like you are using family as an excuse to steal." The cowboy walked forward with the easy confidence of a man who had faced down worse than a drunk gambler. "The lady asked for her property back." "And who are you to interfere?" One of the men who had grabbed Olivia stepped forward, hand hovering near his pistol. "Owen Dalton. I am new in town looking for work, and I do not much care for men who manhandle women." His gaze flicked to Olivia, something gentle in that quick glance that made her chest tighten. "Madam, is that your ring?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. Owen turned back to Samuel. "Give it back." "I won it fair in a game of poker." "Did you?" Owen's tone was mild, but Olivia saw his jaw tighten. "Because it seems you bet something that was not yours to wager. That makes the game invalid and the ring still hers." Samuel's face reddened. "The law says, I know what the law says. I also know what is right." Owen held out his hand. "The ring." The saloon had gone quiet, everyone watching. Samuel glanced around looking for support, but the other card players suddenly found their drinks fascinating. The man with his hand near his gun seemed to reconsider his odds and took a step back. With a curse, Samuel threw the ring. It would have hit the floor, but Owen caught it smoothly, then walked over and placed it gently in Olivia's palm. His fingers were warm and calloused, and for just a moment their hands touched. "Thank you," she whispered. "You should get home, madam. This is not a safe place for you." Olivia wanted to argue that she had every right to retrieve her own property, but the truth was he was right. The saloon was dangerous for women, especially now that she had humiliated her brother in front of his drinking companions. She clutched the ring and hurried out into the cool April evening. The boarding house was only 3 blocks away, but she felt eyes on her the whole walk. Nevada was a railroad town, growing fast and rough, full of men who worked the tracks or drove cattle through on their way to bigger markets. Mrs. Henderson, who ran the boarding house, tried to maintain respectability, but it was a constant battle. Olivia let herself in through the kitchen door and leaned against it, breathing hard. Her hands shook as she looked at the ring, the gold band worn smooth by her mother's fingers. Sarah Andrews had died of pneumonia 3 years ago, and this ring was all Olivia had left of her. The thought that Samuel had been willing to gamble it away to lose it to some stranger over cards and whiskey made her feel sick. But worse was the realization that he would do it again. He would take anything she had if she let him, because he saw her love and loyalty as weaknesses to exploit. How many times had she given him money for rent only to smell liquor on his breath the next day? How many times had she believed his promises? She slipped the ring onto her own finger for safekeeping and went upstairs to the small room she rented. It was barely big enough for a bed and washstand, but it was hers. She had been saving every spare penny, hoping someday to have enough to leave Nevada and start fresh somewhere Samuel could not find her. But he always discovered her hiding spots, always had some emergency that required her savings. Olivia sat on the bed and let herself cry, something she rarely allowed. She had been so strong for so long, holding together the pieces of their broken family, and it had gotten her nowhere. Samuel was going to drink himself to death, and if she stayed, he would drag her down too. A knock on the door startled her. She wiped her eyes quickly. "Yes?" "Miss Andrews?" Mrs. Henderson's voice came through the wood. "There is a gentleman downstairs asking for you." Olivia's stomach knotted. Had Samuel come to demand the ring back? She straightened her dress and went downstairs, preparing for another fight. But it was not Samuel in the boarding house parlor. It was Owen Dalton, hat in hands, looking uncomfortable, surrounded by doilies and faded furniture. "Mr. Dalton?" She was suddenly aware of her tear-stained face and disheveled hair. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to make sure you got home safely, and I thought you should know your brother was talking after you left, making threats." Owen's expression was serious. "He is angry and drunk, and men like that do foolish things. Samuel would not hurt me. He is just—" She trailed off because she was not sure anymore what Samuel would or would not do. Maybe not. But his friends might try to settle the score for him. I embarrassed them tonight. Owen twisted his hat in his hands. "Madam, I do not mean to overstep, but do you have somewhere safe you could stay for a few days? Let things cool down?" "This is where I live. I work here in exchange for the room." "What about other family?" "There is no one, just Samuel." The words came out more bitter than she intended. Owen was quiet for a moment, and Olivia found herself studying him in the lamplight. He had a good face, honest and open, with small lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. There was a kindness in the way he looked at her that she was not used to, a concern that seemed genuine rather than calculated. "I know we just met," he said finally, "and you have no reason to trust me. But I grew up with 2 sisters, and I know what it is like when men use love as a weapon. My father was a drunk who made promises he never kept, and my mother kept believing him until the day he finally left for good. I watched her break herself trying to save him, and it taught me something important. You cannot save someone who does not want to be saved, and trying will only destroy you." The words hit Olivia like a physical blow because they were true. She had known it for months, but had been too afraid to admit it. "Why do you care?" she asked. "You do not know me." Owen met her eyes, and she saw something in his gaze that made her breath catch. "I do not know. When I saw those men grab you, something in me just knew I could not walk away. Maybe it was thinking of my sisters. Maybe it was seeing the look on your face when your brother took that ring. But I cannot just leave you here unprotected. I can take care of myself." "I believe you can. But that does not mean you should have to." He settled his hat back on his head. "I will be at the Silver Star Hotel if you need anything. And tomorrow I'm going to talk to the sheriff about your brother's behavior. That will only make things worse. Maybe. Or maybe it will make him think twice before he tries to steal from you again." Owen tipped his hat. "Good night, Miss Andrews. Lock your door tonight." He left before she could respond, and Olivia stood in the parlor feeling like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. No man had ever defended her like that, with no expectation of payment or favor. No one had ever looked at her situation and called it what it was instead of making excuses. She went back upstairs and did as Owen suggested, locking her door. Then she sat by the window watching the street below and thought about everything that had happened. The ring was heavy on her finger, a reminder of promises kept and promises broken. Her mother had loved her father completely, and he had loved her back the same way. Olivia had grown up believing that kind of love was real, possible, worth waiting for. Then her father died, and Samuel changed, and she learned that love could be twisted into something ugly. Every time she helped her brother, he demanded more. Every time she showed compassion, he saw weakness. He had trained her to doubt her own judgment, to question whether she was being selfish when she wanted to protect what little she had left. But Owen Dalton had walked into that saloon and seen through it all in minutes. He had not made excuses for Samuel or suggested Olivia try harder to understand him. He had simply stated the truth and given her back what was hers. Sleep was long in coming. Around midnight, she heard shouting in the street and recognized Samuel's voice, slurring, drunk and angry. Her whole body tensed, waiting for him to bang on the door, but he eventually stumbled away toward wherever he was sleeping these days. She had not seen him sober in weeks. Morning came gray and cool, with rain threatening. Olivia dressed in her work clothes and went downstairs to help Mrs. Henderson with breakfast. The boarding house had 8 rooms, currently 6 occupied, and feeding everyone was a production that required starting before dawn. "That young man who came by last night," Mrs. Henderson said as they worked together at the stove, "he seemed quite concerned about you. He helped me with the situation." Olivia did not want to explain the whole story. "He has kind eyes, and he asked after you very politely." The older woman gave her a meaningful look. "Not many men like that around here." "I just met him. Sometimes that is all it takes. I knew my Henry was the one within 5 minutes of meeting him." Mrs. Henderson smiled at the memory. "Gone 10 years now, but I still miss him every day. That is how you know it was real love. When you miss them instead of feeling relieved they are gone." The words stayed with Olivia as she served breakfast to the boarders and cleaned up after. She did not miss Samuel when he was not around. She felt relieved, which told her everything she needed to know about their relationship. After the breakfast work was done, she walked to the general store to see what remained. She still owned half of it legally, though Samuel had made sure there was nothing left worth owning. The windows were dusty, the shelves bare except for a few broken crates. Standing in the empty space where her parents had built their life, Olivia felt anger replace the sadness. This had been a good business once. Her father had been honest and fair, and people had trusted him. But Samuel had driven away the customers with broken promises and poor quality goods bought cheap and sold dear. He had traded their family's reputation for quick cash to feed his addictions. "I thought I might find you here." Olivia spun around to see Owen in the doorway. In the morning light, he looked tired, as if he had not slept much either. He carried a burlap sack in one hand. "Are you following me, Mr. Dalton?" "No, madam, I was heading to the telegraph office and saw you through the window. I wanted to give you this." He held out the sack. Inside were supplies, basic things like flour and salt and coffee. "I cannot accept this." "You are not accepting charity. Consider it payment for information." Owen glanced around the empty store. "I am looking for work, and I'm good with horses and cattle. I heard there's a ranch outside town that might be hiring. I was hoping you could tell me how to find it." Olivia knew he was making an excuse to give her the supplies, but his pride allowed her to accept them without feeling like she was taking handouts. "The Rocking Bee Ranch, about 5 miles west. Follow the main road out of town and turn north at the split oak tree. You cannot miss it." "Much obliged." He tipped his hat but did not leave immediately. "I talked to the sheriff this morning about last night." "I asked you not to do that." "I know. But your brother needs to understand there are consequences for his actions." The sheriff agreed to have a word with him. "Make it clear that stealing is stealing even when it is from family." "Samuel will be furious." "Let him be furious. He has been using your love to control you, taking advantage because he knows you will not fight back. Someone needs to show him that is not acceptable." Owen's voice was gentle but firm. You deserve better than being treated like property, Miss Andrews. Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes, and she blinked them back fiercely. She would not cry in front of this stranger, no matter how kind he was. Why are you doing this? What do you want from me? Nothing. I do not want anything. He looked at her with those creek water eyes, and she felt something shift in her chest. I just think you have been hurt enough, and maybe it is time someone stood up for you instead of against you. Then he was gone, leaving Olivia alone in the empty store with a sack of supplies and a heart that was starting to remember what hope felt like. She spent the rest of the morning cleaning the store, even though there was no inventory to sell. It felt good to scrub away the dust and grime, to restore some small measure of order. She was sweeping the front step when Samuel appeared, reeking of old whiskey and fresh anger. The sheriff came to see me, he said without preamble. Said if I take anything else of yours, he will arrest me for theft. Where does he get off treating me like a common criminal? You gambled away mother's ring? That is theft, Samuel. You are my sister. I have a right to make decisions about family property. No, you do not. The words came out stronger than Olivia expected. That ring was mine. Left to me specifically in mother's will. You stole it. And if you try to take anything else, I will have you arrested myself. Samuel's face twisted with rage, and for a moment she thought he might hit her. But then he seemed to deflate, the anger draining away and leaving him looking old and sick. When did you become so hard? When you used up all my softness. Olivia met his gaze steadily. I loved you, Samuel. I covered for you and lied for you and gave you every cent I had, and you threw it all away on cards and drink. I am done. You do not mean that. I do. I cannot save you, and I cannot keep letting you drag me down while you drown. You need to leave me alone now. Or what? Your new cowboy friend will come after me? Samuel's lip curled. Everyone saw him defend you last night. By now, the whole town is talking about how fast you moved on from family to find a new protector. The insinuation made Olivia's cheeks burn. Mr. Dalton is simply a decent person who does not like seeing women mistreated. You should try being decent yourself instead of attacking those who are. Decent does not keep you fed or housed. You will come crawling back to me when you need help. I would rather starve. And as she said it, Olivia realized it was true. She had been so afraid of being alone that she had clung to Samuel no matter how much it hurt. But being alone was better than being used. Samuel stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked away without another word. Olivia watched him go, waiting to feel regret or guilt. Instead, she felt lighter, as if she had put down a burden she had been carrying for years. The next few days passed quietly. Olivia worked at the boarding house and avoided the parts of town where Samuel spent his time. She saw Owen once from a distance, riding out toward the rocking bee ranch, and felt an odd flutter in her stomach at the sight of him sitting tall in the saddle. Then one evening, Mrs. Henderson called her into the parlor where a man in a fine suit was waiting. He introduced himself as Mr. Carmichael, a lawyer from Kansas City. Miss Andrews, I have been trying to locate you for some time. I represent the estate of your mother's sister, Margaret Thornton. She passed away last month, and you are named in her will as the sole beneficiary. Olivia had barely known her aunt, who had moved east after an unhappy marriage and rarely contacted the family. I do not understand. Your aunt never had children, and she made a considerable fortune in the millinery business. She left everything to you with the specific stipulation that none of it can go to your brother. Mr. Carmichael pulled papers from his briefcase. It is not a huge sum, but it amounts to about $3,000, and a small building in Kansas City currently leased to a dress shop. $3,000. Olivia could not breathe. That was more money than she had ever imagined having, enough to start completely over, to go anywhere and do anything. There is one condition, Mr. Carmichael continued. You must claim the inheritance in person in Kansas City within 60 days, and you must sign documents affirming you will not give any portion to Samuel Andrews. Your aunt was quite specific about that. She wrote that she knew what it was like to be used by family and did not want her money wasted on a drunk. Olivia should have felt offended on Samuel's behalf, but instead she felt grateful. Her aunt had understood, had seen clearly what was happening even from a distance, and had tried to help. "I will go to Kansas City," she said. "When do I need to leave?" "As soon as possible. The paperwork has deadlines." Mr. Carmichael handed her a packet. "Everything you need is here. If you can be in Kansas City by the end of the month, we can finalize everything." After he left, Olivia sat holding the papers and feeling like her life had just split into before and after. This was her chance to escape, to build something new where Samuel could not reach her. But it meant leaving Nevada, leaving everything familiar, leaving Owen Dalton, not that he was hers to leave. The thought surprised her. She barely knew the man, had spoken to him perhaps 3 times. But something about him had gotten under her skin, made her think about possibilities she had long since given up on. The way he had defended her, the kindness in his eyes, the understanding in his words about being used by family, it all added up to someone she wanted to know better. But he had his own life, and she had a future waiting in Kansas City. It would be foolish to build dreams around a cowboy who had shown her a moment of decency. Still, that night, Olivia lay awake thinking about creek water eyes and strong hands gently returning her mother's ring. She thought about the way Owen had looked at her, like she was worth defending, and she wondered what might have happened if circumstances were different, if she were not about to leave and he were not just passing through. The next morning she gave Mrs. Henderson notice that she would be leaving at the end of the week. The older woman looked sad but understanding. "That inheritance is a blessing," she said. "You take it and build a good life, far away from that brother of yours. I will miss you. You've been kind to me. You are a good girl, Olivia. Any man would be lucky to have you." Mrs. Henderson patted her hand. "I hope you find someone who treats you the way you deserve." Olivia spent the week preparing to leave, selling the few possessions she could not carry and packing the rest. She did not tell Samuel about the inheritance, afraid he would try to claim it somehow despite the legal protections. Word would reach him eventually, but by then she would be gone. On her last day in Nevada, she walked through town one final time, saying goodbye to the places she had known all her life. The schoolhouse where she had learned to read, the church where her parents had married, the cemetery where they were buried. She stood at their graves and promised to make them proud, to use this second chance wisely. She was heading back to the boarding house when she heard hoofbeats behind her and turned to see Owen riding up on a beautiful bay mare. He dismounted smoothly and walked over leading the horse. "Miss Andrews, I heard you were leaving." News travels fast in small towns. Olivia was acutely aware of how she must look, dusty from the cemetery and red-eyed from crying over her parents' graves. "I wanted to say goodbye and wish you well." Owen looked genuinely regretful. "I also wanted to give you something." He pulled a small bundle from his saddlebag and handed it to her. Inside was a beautiful leather journal, the cover tooled with an intricate flower pattern. "I cannot accept this." "Yes, you can. Every new beginning should be recorded. My sister Emily kept journals, and she always said writing things down helped her process them." Owen smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger and more carefree. "Besides, I already bought it, and I have no use for it myself. My handwriting is terrible." Olivia ran her fingers over the leather, touched by the thoughtfulness. "Thank you. This is very kind. You are going to do great things, Miss Andrews. I can tell. You have a strength in you that your brother tried to crush, but he did not succeed. You are still standing, still fighting. That is remarkable." "I do not feel remarkable. I feel terrified." "Good. That means you are doing something worth doing." Owen looked at her with such warmth that Olivia's heart ached. "Fear means you care about the outcome. It means you are invested in building something real." "Did you get the job at the ranch?" She did not want him to leave yet, wanted to stretch this conversation as long as possible. "I did. The rocking bee needed a horse breaker, and that is what I am best at. The pay is good, and the foreman seems fair. Owen glanced away, suddenly looking uncertain. I will be staying in the area for a while, at least through the summer. That is good. I'm glad you found work. They stood in awkward silence, and Olivia felt the weight of things unsaid pressing down on her. She wanted to tell him that he had changed something in her, that his simple act of kindness had reminded her she was worth defending. She wanted to ask if he felt the same pull she did, if he lay awake thinking about her the way she thought about him. But what was the point? She was leaving for Kansas City tomorrow, and their paths would likely never cross again. It was better to let this be a brief, bright moment in a difficult time rather than torture herself with what might have been. I should get back, she said finally. I still have packing to finish. Of course, I did not mean to keep you. Owen mounted his horse in one fluid motion, looking down at her with an expression she could not quite read. Safe travels, Miss Andrews. I hope Kansas City treats you well. Thank you for everything, Mr. Dalton. I will not forget your kindness. She walked away before she could change her mind about leaving, clutching the journal to her chest. Behind her, she heard Owen ride off in the other direction, and it took all her willpower not to turn around for one last look. That night, Olivia opened the journal and began to write. She wrote about her parents and Samuel and the slow, painful process of realizing someone she loved was using her. She wrote about the inheritance and her hopes for Kansas City. And she wrote about Owen Dalton, the cowboy who had defended her and asked for nothing in return, who had reminded her that not all men use love as a weapon. The next morning she boarded the train east, watching Nevada disappear behind her with mixed feelings. Relief at escaping Samuel's grip, sadness at leaving her parents' graves, and a strange hollow feeling when she thought about Owen working at the Rocking Bee Ranch, breaking horses and living a life she would never be part of. Kansas City was overwhelming after Nevada's dusty streets. The buildings were taller, the streets busier, the noise constant. But Mr. Carmichael was helpful, guiding her through the legal paperwork and showing her the building her aunt had left. It was a 3-story brick structure near the Market District, solid and well-maintained. The dress shop on the ground floor paid reliable rent, and the upper floors were divided into apartments also rented. You will receive monthly income from the tenants, Mr. Carmichael explained, enough to live on comfortably if you're careful, and the $3,000 can be invested or used however you see fit. Olivia found a small apartment on the second floor of her own building and spent her first week in Kansas City simply trying to adjust. She bought furniture from secondhand shops, learned to navigate the busy streets, and forced herself to be brave about starting over. Every night she wrote in the journal Owen had given her, processing her experiences and slowly beginning to believe this was real. But despite her new freedom and financial security, something felt incomplete. She made acquaintances among the other tenants and shopkeepers, but no real friends. Kansas City was beautiful and exciting, but it was not home. And at night, when she lay in her narrow bed listening to the city sounds, she thought about a cowboy with kind eyes who had seen her worth when she had almost forgotten it herself. Spring turned to summer, and Olivia settled into a routine. She managed her building, dealt with tenant concerns, and slowly learned to trust that Samuel could not reach her here. He sent one letter demanding money, but she did not respond. Her aunt's lawyer had made the inheritance ironclad, and Samuel had no claim on it. In July, a woman named Patricia Murphy moved into one of the third-floor apartments. She was a widow about 10 years older than Olivia, practical and funny and kind. They became friends slowly, sharing coffee in the mornings and talking about their lives. You seem sad, Patricia said one morning as they sat in Olivia's apartment. Homesick, maybe? Not for the place I left, but I miss something, and I cannot quite figure out what it is. Or maybe it is someone. Patricia gave her a knowing look. You wrote about a cowboy in your journal, did you not? I saw you writing one day, and you had this look on your face, all soft and wistful. Olivia felt her cheeks heat. I barely knew him. Sometimes that is all it takes. My husband and I knew each other 2 weeks before we got married, And we had 15 happy years before the fever took him. Patricia sipped her coffee. If you care about this cowboy, why not go back and see if he feels the same? Because I would look foolish chasing after a man who was simply being decent. He probably has not thought about me once since I left. Or maybe he thinks about you all the time, but assumes you have moved on. Patricia shrugged. You will never know unless you ask. The idea took root in Olivia's mind and would not let go. What if Owen did think about her? What if that moment of connection had been real for him too? But the thought of returning to Nevada, of facing Samuel again and potentially being rejected by Owen, was terrifying. She was still wrestling with the decision when a letter arrived from Mrs. Henderson in late August. The older woman wrote that Samuel had been arrested for trying to rob the bank while drunk. He was in jail awaiting trial, facing several years in prison. Mrs. Henderson thought Olivia should know, though she understood if Olivia chose not to return for the trial. Olivia sat with the letter for a long time. Part of her felt she should feel something for Samuel, pity or grief or anger, but mostly she just felt tired. He had made his choices, and now he would face the consequences. She could not save him, and she no longer wanted to try. But the letter gave her an excuse to return to Nevada, to see how the town looked now that she was free of Samuel's shadow. And maybe, if she was brave enough, to see if a certain cowboy was still working at the Rocking Bee Ranch. She told Patricia her plan, and her friend smiled. About time. Go find your cowboy and see what happens. If nothing else, you will have closure. Olivia packed a small bag and boarded the train west, her heart pounding with equal parts terror and excitement. The journal came with her, now half filled with her thoughts and experiences. She read back over what she had written about Owen and wondered if she was making a huge mistake. Nevada looked smaller than she remembered, dustier and more worn. She checked into the hotel rather than the boarding house, not wanting to impose on Mrs. Henderson. Then she walked through town, noticing how people stared. News of her inheritance had clearly spread, and folks looked at her differently now that she had money. Mrs. Henderson was delighted to see her and immediately insisted on hearing all about Kansas City. Over tea, Olivia asked carefully about Owen Dalton. Oh, he is still at the Rocking Bee, doing quite well, from what I hear. The foreman speaks highly of him. Mrs. Henderson gave her a sly look. He asked about you, you know. Several times after you left. Seemed quite disappointed to hear you had gone to Kansas City. Olivia's heart leaped. Did he say anything else? Just that he hoped you were happy. Such a nice young man, polite, hard-working, and those eyes. Mrs. Henderson fanned herself dramatically. If I were 30 years younger, I would be chasing him myself. That evening, Olivia borrowed a horse from the livery and rode out toward the Rocking Bee Ranch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the air smelled like hay and dust and summer. She had forgotten how beautiful Missouri could be, all rolling hills and green fields. The ranch was impressive, with a large main house and several outbuildings. Horses grazed in the near pasture, and she could see cattle in the distance. She was about to turn back, losing her nerve, when she saw a figure working with a horse in the corral. It was Owen, shirtless in the heat, guiding a young stallion in circles on a long rope. His body was lean and muscular, bronzed from working outdoors, and Olivia felt her mouth go dry. He moved with such grace and confidence, talking softly to the horse, completely focused on his work. She dismounted and walked to the corral fence, watching. Owen did not notice her immediately, too intent on the horse. But when he finally led the stallion to the center and looked up, his eyes went wide with shock. Miss Andrews? Hello, Mr. Dalton. Olivia's voice came out breathier than she intended. Owen handed the horse off to another ranch hand and vaulted over the fence with surprising agility. He grabbed his shirt from a post and pulled it on, though he did not bother with the buttons. What are you doing here? Is everything all right? Everything is fine. I came back to deal with some family business. Samuel was arrested. I heard about that. I'm sorry. I am not. He made his choices. Olivia twisted the reins in her hands, suddenly nervous. I wanted to see you before I went back to Kansas City. to thank you properly for what you did for me. You already thanked me. No, I did not. Not really. She took a breath, trying to find the right words. You gave me back more than my mother's ring that night. You reminded me that I was worth defending, that I did not have to accept being used and mistreated. You saw me when everyone else just saw Samuel's unfortunate sister, and that changed everything. Owen stepped closer, and she could see the intensity in his creekwater eyes. How did it change things? I stopped letting him control me. I walked away and built a new life. I have my own building now, my own income. I am independent in a way I never thought possible. Olivia met his gaze steadily. But I realized something in Kansas City. I spent so long protecting myself from being used that I forgot what it felt like to genuinely care about someone, to want to know them better, to see where things might lead. And you came all the way back to Nevada to tell me this? Owen's voice was low, almost a whisper. I came back to see if you might feel the same way, if that connection I felt was real or just me being grateful. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure he could hear it. And if I am completely wrong, I will ride away and we will both forget this conversation happened. Owen reached out slowly and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. You are not wrong. I have thought about you every day since you left. I kept hoping you would write or come back, but I figured Kansas City offered you more than a horsebreaker in Missouri ever could. Kansas City is lonely. It has opportunity, but no heart. Olivia leaned into his touch without thinking. I kept writing about you in the journal you gave me, pages and pages trying to understand what I was feeling. And what are you feeling? His thumb traced her jawline, making her shiver despite the heat. Like I want to know everything about you. Where you grew up, what you dream about, whether you prefer coffee or tea. She smiled slightly. And I want you to know me too, the real me, not the broken girl you met in a saloon. I never thought you were broken. Hurt, yes. Used by people who should have protected you, but not broken. Owen's other hand came up to frame her face, gentle but sure. And I would very much like to know everything about you, Olivia Andrews. The sound of her name on his lips sent warmth flooding through her. My friends call me Liv. Then I hope you will call me Owen, not Mr. Dalton. They stood there for a long moment, just looking at each other, and Olivia felt like she could breathe properly for the first time in months. This was what had been missing in Kansas City, not just companionship or security, but this specific person and the way he made her feel seen and valued. I should go, she said reluctantly. It is getting dark, and you have work in the morning. When do you leave for Kansas City? I'm not sure yet. I need to attend Samuel's trial, which is next week. Then can I see you again before you go? Maybe take you to dinner? Owen looked almost shy, which was endearing on a man who broke horses for a living. I would like that very much. He helped her mount her horse, his hand steady on her waist, and watched as she rode away. Olivia looked back once and saw him still standing there, a silhouette against the darkening sky, and felt hope unfurl in her chest like a banner. Over the next week, Owen courted her properly. He took her to dinner at the hotel restaurant, walked with her along the creek outside town, and sat with her in the church garden talking for hours. They shared their histories, the good and the bad, building trust slowly and carefully. Owen told her about growing up in Texas, the youngest of 4 children. His father's drinking had torn the family apart, and his mother had struggled to keep everyone fed. His 2 sisters had married young to escape, and his older brother had been killed in a barroom fight. Owen had left Texas at 17, working his way north as a ranch hand, determined to build a better life than the one he had been born into. I promised myself I would never be like my father, he said one evening as they sat by the creek. Never use the people I love to make myself feel better. Never run from my responsibilities. And when I saw your brother treating you that way, using your love against you, it brought back every bad memory. I could not stand by and let it happen. You saved me that night, not just from losing the ring, but from losing myself completely. Olivia leaned against his shoulder, feeling safe in a way she had not felt in years. I was so close to believing I deserved to be treated that way. You deserve everything good. Owen wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer. Someone who treats you with respect, who builds you up instead of tearing you down. Someone who sees your strength and does not try to use it against you. Someone like you? I hope so. I know we have not known each other long, but Liv, when I am with you, everything makes sense. The future I had been working towards suddenly has shape and purpose. He turned to look at her, his expression serious. I am falling in love with you. I wanted you to know that before you make any decisions about Kansas City. Olivia's breath caught. I am falling in love with you too. I think I started the night you gave me back my mother's ring. But Owen, my life is complicated. I have the building in Kansas City, responsibilities there. Then I will come to Kansas City with you. I can find work there, and we can build a life together. He cupped her face in his hands. I am not asking you to give up what you have. I am just asking you not to walk away from what we could have together. You would leave the rocking bee, leave the work you love? I love you more than I love breaking horses. And there are horses in Kansas City too, I am sure. Owen smiled, that transforming smile that made him look almost boyish. Besides, my mother always said home is not a place, it is people. You are home to me now, Liv. She kissed him then, her first real kiss, and it was everything she had imagined and more. Gentle but passionate, respectful but full of promise. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Is that a yes? Owen asked, his forehead resting against hers. That is absolutely a yes. Samuel's trial was brief and depressing. He pleaded guilty to attempted robbery, clearly hoping for leniency. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in prison, and Samuel did not even look at Olivia when they led him away. She felt nothing watching him go, which perhaps was the saddest part of all. Her brother had used up all her sympathy and forgiveness, leaving nothing behind but indifference. Owen sat beside her throughout the trial, a steady presence holding her hand. Afterward, they walked out of the courthouse into bright September sunshine. Are you all right? Owen asked. I am. It is over now, truly over. Samuel cannot hurt me anymore. Olivia squeezed his hand. I can finally move forward. They rode back to Kansas City together on the train, sitting close and making plans. Owen had given notice at the Rocking Bee, and the foreman had been understanding, even giving him a reference letter for jobs in Kansas City. Olivia wrote to Patricia warning her that she was bringing home a cowboy, and Patricia's return telegram simply said, finally. Kansas City felt different coming back with Owen. The noise seemed less overwhelming, the crowds less daunting. They found him work at a stable on the edge of town, where the owner was thrilled to hire an experienced horsebreaker. The pay was good, and Owen moved into the apartment next to Olivia's, which scandalized some of the more traditional tenants but pleased Patricia enormously. I approve, she told Olivia after meeting Owen. He looks at you like you hung the moon and stars. That is the way a man should look at the woman he loves. Over the fall months, Olivia and Owen built a life together. They were careful about propriety, courting openly, and making sure everyone knew their intentions were honorable. But they spent every possible moment together, learning each other's rhythms and habits, falling deeper in love with each passing day. Owen was everything Samuel had not been: reliable, honest, hardworking, and gentle. He never took without asking, never assumed her money or property was his to use. Instead, he contributed his own earnings to their shared future, insisting on paying his own way even when Olivia told him it was not necessary. It is necessary to me, he said firmly. I will not be the kind of man who lives off a woman's inheritance. We are partners, Liv, equal partners. In December, Owen took her to a small jeweler's shop and asked her to pick out a ring. She chose a simple gold band with a small diamond elegant and understated. Nothing like the gaudy pieces in the display case. "Are you sure this is what you want?" the jeweler asked, clearly hoping to sell something more expensive. "This is perfect," Olivia said, looking at Owen rather than the ring. "It is honest and real, and that is all I need." Owen proposed formally that evening, getting down on one knee in her apartment with Patricia as an ecstatic witness. "Olivia Andrews, you have shown me what real love looks like, the kind that builds up instead of tearing down, that gives freely without expecting payment. You have made me believe in the future again, in the possibility of building something good and lasting. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Olivia said through happy tears. "Yes, absolutely, yes." They were married in January of 1877 in a small church ceremony with Patricia and Owen's stable owner as witnesses. Olivia wore a simple blue dress and Owen wore his best suit, and neither of them could stop smiling. The preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and when Owen kissed her, Olivia felt like every difficult moment of her past had been worth it to reach this perfect present. They honeymooned in Olivia's apartment, now theirs together, and spent a week simply enjoying being married. Owen was patient and gentle on their wedding night, making sure Olivia felt safe and loved. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, she thought about how love was supposed to feel like this, safe and warm and right, not like a weapon turned against you. "What are you thinking, Torstemoir?" Owen asked, running his fingers through her loose hair. "That I'm glad I stopped letting Samuel use my love against me. If I had not walked away, I never would have been free to fall in love with you. And I'm glad I followed my instinct that night in the saloon. Defending you was the best decision I ever made." Owen kissed her forehead. "You were worth fighting for, Liv. You are always worth fighting for." They settled into married life easily. Owen continued working at the stable while Olivia managed her building. They combined their incomes and began saving toward buying a small house outside the city, somewhere they could have horses of their own. Every evening they sat together in their apartment, sharing their days and making plans for the future. In March, Olivia realized she was pregnant. The news filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She told Owen over dinner, watching his face carefully. His reaction was immediate and unguarded. He whooped with delight, picked her up, and spun her around despite her laughing protests. "We are having a baby! Liv, we are going to be parents!" "Are you not scared?" she asked when he finally set her down. "Terrified, but also thrilled." Owen placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "This baby will be so loved, Liv. We will give them everything we did not have growing up, stability and safety, and parents who do not use love as a weapon." Their son was born in November of 1877, a healthy baby with his father's eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Thomas, after Olivia's father, and he was perfect in every way that mattered. Owen proved to be a natural father, patient and attentive, changing diapers and walking the floor with Thomas when he fussed at night. "You are wonderful with him," Olivia said one evening, watching Owen rock their son to sleep. "I just keep thinking about how my father was, and I do the opposite." Owen smiled down at Thomas. "It is not hard to be a good father when you have such motivation." As Thomas grew from baby to toddler, Olivia and Owen continued building their life. They bought a small house with a barn, and Owen started breeding horses in addition to breaking them. Olivia sold her building for a good profit and invested the money carefully, ensuring their financial security. They were not rich, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. In 1880, their daughter Emma was born, a fierce little thing who came into the world screaming and never quite stopped having opinions. She had Owen's temperament, sunny and optimistic, while Thomas was more thoughtful like his mother. The two children adored each other, and watching them play together filled Olivia with contentment she had never imagined possible. "Remember when you thought you would never trust anyone again?" Owen asked one evening as they sat on their porch, watching Thomas teach Emma to pet the horses gently. "I remember thinking love was a trap, something people used to hurt you." Olivia leaned against his shoulder. You showed me I was wrong. Love is supposed to lift you up, make you stronger. We showed each other? Owen kissed the top of her head. You taught me that it is possible to escape a bad family pattern to build something better. Every day with you and the children, I'm grateful for that night in the saloon when I decided to defend a stranger. I was not a stranger for long. No, you became my whole world pretty fast. He pulled her closer. I love you, Liv. More every day, if that is possible. I love you too. So much that sometimes it scares me. Do not be scared. This is the good kind of love, the kind that lasts. Owen gestured to their children, their home, the life they had built together. This is what happens when two people use love to build each other up instead of tearing each other down. Years passed in a blur of happiness. Thomas grew into a serious young man who loved books and wanted to study law. Emma became a skilled rider who helped Owen train horses. They had a third child in 1884, another boy they named James, who was somehow even more energetic than his siblings. Olivia occasionally thought about Samuel, wondering what became of him after prison. She heard through letters from Mrs. Henderson that he had been released early for good behavior and left Missouri entirely. She hoped he had found peace and sobriety somewhere, but she did not seek him out. That chapter of her life was closed, and she had no desire to reopen it. Instead, she focused on the family she and Owen had created, on the love they gave freely and received in return. She wrote in her journal regularly, documenting the small joys and challenges of their life. The leather was worn now, the pages filled with her neat handwriting, a testament to everything she and Owen had built together. One evening in the fall of 1890, when Thomas was nearly 13 and preparing to leave for boarding school in the East, the whole family gathered for dinner. Olivia looked around the table at her husband and children, at the life they had created through love and hard work, and felt overwhelming gratitude. "What are you thinking about, Mama?" Emma asked, always the most observant. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am. About how love can tear you down or build you up, depending on the person giving it." Olivia reached for Owen's hand across the table. "Your father taught me what real love looks like, the kind that makes you stronger instead of weaker." "That is because Papa is the best," James announced with the confidence of a 6-year-old. "He is pretty wonderful," Olivia agreed, smiling at Owen. "Only because I married the most remarkable woman in Missouri," Owen said. "Your mother saved me just as much as I saved her. We saved each other." Thomas, who was reaching the age where everything embarrassed him, rolled his eyes, but was smiling. "You two are disgustingly in love." "We are," Owen said without shame. "And someday you will understand how rare and precious that is, how worth fighting for." After dinner, when the children were in bed, Olivia and Owen sat on their porch in the cool evening air. She leaned against him, breathing in the familiar scent of horses and hay and home. "Do you ever regret leaving Texas?" she asked. "Never. Texas was where I came from, but Missouri is where I found myself, where I found you." Owen wrapped his arms around her. "Every hard thing I went through led me to that saloon on the night you needed someone to defend you. I would not change any of it." "I would not change anything either. Not even Samuel's worst behavior, because it taught me what love should not be. And that made me able to recognize real love when I found it." Olivia turned in his arms to face him. "You used your love to help me start again, Owen. You gave me back my life. We gave each other our lives. That is what real love does." He kissed her softly, a kiss that still held the same warmth and promise as their first kiss by the creek all those years ago. "And we will keep giving each other our lives, every day, for as long as we both shall live." "That sounds like forever. That sounds perfect." They sat together in the darkness, two people who had both learned the hard way that love could hurt, but who had been brave enough to try again. Samuel had used Olivia's love against her until she stopped trusting anyone. But Owen had used his love to help her start believing again, to rebuild what had been broken, to create something beautiful from the ruins. Their story was not one of instant transformation or easy answers. It was a story of slow healing, of learning to trust again, of building a life brick by brick on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine affection. It was a story of two damaged people who found in each other not a savior or a cure, but a partner willing to do the hard work of building something real. And in the end, that was the most powerful love story of all. Not the fairy tale romance that solved all problems with a kiss, but the genuine partnership that faced problems together and came out stronger on the other side. Not the love that demanded and took, but the love that gave freely and received gratefully in return. Thomas went off to school, and Emma started training horses professionally, and James grew into a young man who wanted to be a veterinarian. Olivia and Owen grew older together, their hair turning gray, their faces gaining lines that told the story of a life well lived. They weathered storms and celebrated triumphs, always side by side. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Owen gave Olivia a new journal, identical to the first one he had given her all those years ago in Nevada. This one he had tooled himself, learning the craft specifically to recreate that first gift. "For the next chapter of our story," he said, pressing it into her hands. Olivia ran her fingers over the familiar flower pattern, tears in her eyes. "I love you so much. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible, for defending me when I could not defend myself, for loving me back to life. Thank you for being brave enough to love again after everything you went through. Thank you for building this life with me." Owen pulled her close. "We did good, did we not? We took all that pain and turned it into something beautiful." "We did very good," Olivia agreed. They lived many more years together, watching their children grow and start families of their own. Thomas became a lawyer and married a school teacher. Emma took over the horse breeding business and married one of her clients. James became a veterinarian just as he had dreamed and married a fellow student from his program. Olivia and Owen became grandparents many times over, filling their home with laughter and chaos. They told their grandchildren stories about the old days, about Nevada and the night they met, carefully editing out the worst parts but keeping the essential truth. That love could be a weapon or a gift, depending on who wielded it. One warm summer evening, when they were both well into their 60s, Olivia and Owen sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Their hands were clasped together, fingers intertwined, a habit formed over decades of partnership. "Do you remember that first night?" Olivia asked, "when you walked into that saloon and defended me? I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever seen, standing up to your brother, demanding what was yours, refusing to back down even when you were outnumbered." Owen squeezed her hand gently. "I remember seeing your spirit and knowing I could not walk away. I remember thinking you were either very brave or very foolish, stepping into a family fight like that." "Probably both." Owen smiled. "But I'm glad I did. That moment changed everything for both of us." "It did." Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder, still fitting perfectly against him after all these years. "They used my love against me until I stopped loving, stopped trusting. I thought that was how I would survive, but you showed me a different way. We showed each other. You taught me that it was possible to break the cycle, to be different than the people who hurt us." Owen kissed the top of her head. "We built something good, Liv, something that will outlast us." She thought about their children and grandchildren, all the love they had created and shared, about the life they had built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine affection, about the way Owen still looked at her like she hung the moon, even after decades of marriage. "Yes," she said softly, "we really did." They sat together as the sun disappeared below the horizon, and the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Two people who had found each other in the aftermath of pain and built something beautiful from the wreckage. Two people who had learned that love did not have to hurt, that the right person would use their love to lift you up, not tear you down. The cowboy had used his love to help her start again, and she had used hers to help him believe in the possibility of breaking family patterns and creating something better. Together they had built a life worth living, a love worth keeping, a story worth telling. And as the night settled around them and they finally went inside to the home they had made together, Olivia felt profound gratitude for that long-ago evening in a dusty Missouri saloon, for the stranger who had become her everything, who had seen her worth when she had forgotten it, who had loved her back to life. The ring on her finger caught the lamplight, the simple gold band Owen had helped her choose all those years ago. It was worn smooth now, just like her mother's ring had been polished by decades of wear. A symbol of promises kept, of love given freely, of two people who had been brave enough to try again. That night, lying in bed with Owen's arms around her, Olivia fell asleep thinking about how far she had come, from the broken girl whose brother used her love as a weapon to the woman who had built a life filled with genuine affection and mutual respect. It had not been easy, and it had not been quick, but it had been worth every moment. And in the morning she would wake up beside the man she loved, in the home they had created, surrounded by the family they had built. She would spend another day being grateful for the cowboy who had walked into her life and changed everything. Because that was what real love did. It did not use or manipulate or take without giving. It built and strengthened and created something better than either person could have made alone. And that was the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that love, when given by the right person, could heal even the deepest wounds and create beauty from ashes. Their story was complete, a circle closed, a life well lived. And if their grandchildren asked, as they sometimes did, what the secret to a happy marriage was, both Olivia and Owen would say the same thing. Find someone who uses their love to build you up, not tear you down. Find someone who sees your worth and reflects it back to you. Find someone who makes you want to be better, not because they demand it, but because their love inspires it. That was the lesson Olivia had learned, painful and hard-won. That was the gift Owen had given her, freely and without strings. And together they had created something that would last long after they were gone. A legacy of love used rightly, of trust rebuilt, of two broken people who had found wholeness in each other. The end came peacefully for both of them many years later, surrounded by family and love. They left behind children who had learned from their example, grandchildren who carried their values forward, and a story that their descendants would tell for generations, the story of how they met, how they saved each other, how they built a life worth living. In the end, that was all anyone could hope for. To love and be loved in return, to create something meaningful that outlasted the brevity of human life. Olivia and Owen had done that and more, proving that even the deepest wounds could heal when tended by the right hands, that even the most damaged hearts could learn to trust again when given patience and genuine affection. Their love story was not perfect, because real love never is, but it was real and honest and true, built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine care, and that made it more powerful than any fairy tale, more meaningful than any romance novel could capture, because this was the truth about love, the lesson that took Olivia half a lifetime to learn. Love should never be used as a weapon. It should be a gift, freely given and gratefully received. It should build up, not tear down, strengthen, not weaken, create, not destroy. Owen had understood that instinctively, and he had used his love to help Olivia start believing again, to rebuild what her brother had tried to destroy, to create something beautiful from the ruins of her trust. And Olivia had used her love to help Owen break the cycle of his own painful past, to prove that it was possible to be different than the people who hurt you, to build something good and lasting. Together, they had created a love story for the ages. Not because it was dramatic or tragic, but because it was real. Because it showed that damaged people could heal, that broken trust could be rebuilt, that love, when wielded rightly, was the most powerful force in the world. That was their legacy. That was their gift to their children and grandchildren and all who heard their story. The knowledge that no matter how badly you have been hurt, no matter how deeply you have been betrayed, real love is still possible. You just have to be brave enough to try again, wise enough to recognize it when it appears, and strong enough to build something lasting from it. Olivia and Owen had been all those things, and they had created something truly beautiful in the process. A life filled with love and laughter, challenges and triumphs, ordinary moments that added up to an extraordinary whole. And that, in the end, was the best any of us could hope for. To love and be loved, to give and receive, to build something meaningful that outlasts our brief time on this earth. They had done that and more, these two souls who had found each other in a dusty Missouri saloon and refused to let go. Their story was complete now, the circle closed, the last page written. But the love they had created lived on in their children and grandchildren, in the values they had instilled, in the example they had set, and somewhere, in that eternal place where love never dies, two souls were still entwined, still building each other up, still proving that real love, the kind that heals instead of hurts, was the greatest adventure of all.